Welcome back to the CRECo.ai Real Estate Roundtable for another sector interview. Sector interviews are bonus episodes for the CRECo.ai Real Estate Roundtable, your comprehensive all-in-one view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts. I'm Andreas Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and technology growth strategist for both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. And joining me for this show is special guest, Senior Vice President, Government Relations at the Inland Real Estate Group of Companies, Dan Wagner, to discuss 1031 exchanges, institutional real estate, and upcoming government policy changes affecting your day-to-day business. In the same format as our regular shows, this will be in three parts: an introduction, a bit of history, who Dan is, where he's been, why he should be advising us. The second, diving deep into the 1031 exchange, all the benefits it brings, what you can do and what you should focus on. And part three, where to get involved or where to get more information. Dan, welcome. I could not be more excited to have you here for the show with all the expertise and knowledge you bring. And the Lincoln behind you and logos included.
I'm coming at you live from Inland World Headquarters here in Oak Brook, Illinois. So it's good to be here today. Thank you.
I love it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, over 18 years at Inland.
Yes, 18 years. Absolutely. It's the best place I've ever worked. And it's the only, this is where I'm going to finish my career. This is a family of Inland, and it's coming here every day is the best thing for me. I love it.
I'm happy to hear it. So for our listeners tuning in for the first time with you, who don't know you that well, you've been at Inland for 18 years. You sit on the board of the Civic Federation. You're part of the Wellness House. Not to mention you're a National Association of Realtors card-carrying member for God knows how long.
Since 2004.
Since 2004. 2007 for me. And past president in different associations there. Tell us, how did you end up in government relations? What does that even mean for us in real estate?
Well, that's a really good question. I am, I guess you could call me the ultimate advocate. The whole position that was created by Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Goodwin is the chairman and CEO of the Inland Real Estate Group. And I guess I'll kind of give you a little bit of background on Inland and me if that helps to explain things. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things I love is working here for Dan Goodwin and the founders of Inland. There are 4 Chicago public school teachers, and they come from absolutely nothing. So Dan Goodwin is the chairman and CEO. His dad worked at a tool and die company in Chicago. Bob Baum's dad, he's the chief legal counsel. His dad was traveling around selling auto parts to different gas stations out of his car. He also was a cantor for a synagogue. Joe Cosenza's dad was a barber. And then Bob Parks' dad was a janitor. So these guys come from nothing, and they ended up becoming Chicago public school teachers. They went to college together, and they got their degrees and they started teaching. And in the summers, they realized, wait a second, we're making $5,500 a year. We got to do something more for our family. So they got into real estate, and they got other Chicago public school teachers together and to give them money. And they invested this money and did really well, so well that they left teaching. And they ended up getting 42,000 apartments in Chicago. They're the largest landlord of Chicago. And they did that through limited partnerships. Well, one of the reasons why my position exists is through this limited partnership stuff with tax reform. So it's really interesting to see that in the 80s, when the tax reform was put into place, pass-through entities like limited partnerships were really hurt. And they had a variety of their investors who were their fellow principals and teachers and family and friends that some of them were underwater in their investments. Well, these 4 teachers that came from nothing, they said they're not going to let anybody go underwater. So they put all their money back into the company, and they went to Walmart. And they said, hey, Walmart, I know you've never done this before, but we want to do sale leasebacks with you. And Walmart thought, boy, these 4 teachers are an interesting story. They said, okay, we'll do it. So they became the largest landlord of Walmart. At the same time, they went to Treasury and they worked with some lawyers, and they were able to say, hey, Treasury, we got this cool idea. We let us 1031 exchange people out of these underwater investments into a fractional share interest of these Walmarts. And Treasury's like, well, nobody's really done that before. Yeah, go ahead and do it. So that was the birth of Inland and 1031 and really jump into the stratosphere, because it's kind of like it's a wonderful life moment that nobody ever heard of that before. So my position, getting back to why I exist. So these four teachers are, actually Dan Goodwin said he never wants government to happen to Inland again, because they did not realize this is what was going on in Washington. And he also is a realtor, and he said one of the most powerful organizations to belong to is the National Association of Realtors. And so he created my position, and I'm like the second person in it, because he wanted to basically have a canary in the coal mine. He wanted somebody to be able to let him know what's going on that will impact the industry, their clients, and their company. So that's why my position exists. And I call myself Tom Sawyer of Inland. So my job is to get all of our associations to paint the fence for us. So for some millennials, they might not get the reference of Tom Sawyer, but I'm 50. Oh, I'll be 55 pretty soon. So I'm dating myself possibly, but obviously getting the associations to work on behalf of the commercial real estate industry is a big deal. And a lot of times, because Inland is such a leader in the marketplace, I get to be a part of lots of organizations. So I act as a brain synapse, kind of connecting different groups together. So this 1031 like-kind exchange advocacy efforts for the last couple of years has really been it's been really fun to be able to kind of bring folks together and work with everybody. And you go from the National Association of Realtors to the International Council of Shopping Centers, Institute for Portfolio Alternatives, to the Mortgage Bankers Association, the CRECo. I mean, it's just across the board. Everybody's coming together, and we're uniting to help defend this really important part of our tax code. And Inland has been, I mean, it's part of our history and culture. So that's why I exist.
Well, I'm sure it's much more than that, but that was a great synopsis
Okay.
of what you do on the day-to-day. And for those that don't necessarily get it, and I'm speaking of my brokerage clients, once upon a time before we were working together, they came in, they were selling properties, they didn't realize all the add value that they could, all the advantages of a 1031, both in economic jobs creation, labor, as well as tax benefits. What does it mean to the farmers on Main Street? What does it mean to the local municipalities? Why is the 1031 such a big deal when we're talking about economic growth?
Well, that's a great question. It's been really a great learning experience for me, because obviously before I got into the real estate world, I was in the political world as chief of staff to our county board chairman here in DuPage County, which is the county outside of Cook. And when I got my real estate license and then I got my securities license, I learned that the 1031 and Inland is really the market leader in the 1031 space. Inland was worked with a variety of lawyers and worked with the industry and created the Delaware Statutory Trust 1031 like-kind exchange, and that has been such a powerful tool for people to invest in. And the 1031, again, as I go back, it's just such a part of our culture and who we are. It made sense that our founders were the ones that, Mr. Goodwin was the one to be able to create this, and we're very proud of being the market leader in this. The 1031 goes back to over 100 years ago, was put into place in the tax code. And really, for folks to understand it, it's kind of like the 401k of real estate. And, with your 401k, you put your pre-tax dollars in, you make your money and you put it in, it doesn't get taxed, and you invest and it grows and grows. And then eventually when you retire, you take it out, and that's when you start paying the tax. Well, for real estate, for commercial real estate only, you're able to go from your, like say you buy one apartment and you're working on that and do a great job, and then you're able to sell that 1031 exchange, kind of like a 401k, into a 4 flat, and then you keep going up. And every time you grow your portfolio, you're deferring the tax because you're using the tax money that you'd be paying Uncle Sam to grow your portfolio. And then that helps you grow. And then eventually, when you cash out, that's when you pay the tax. So it really is probably the best explanation of what a 1031 is understanding it through like a 401k for real estate. And once people realize that, then it really makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of members of Congress, their staff members are very young, and so it was harder for them to understand it. They're like, boy, this sounds like a tax loophole. And when you explain it like, oh, this is the 401k of real estate, they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Because, I mean, can you imagine if we didn't have the 401k? I mean, that's what you're talking about. It's like if you get rid of the 1031, it's like getting rid of the 401k, and nobody would ever think about doing that. That's how people are able to retire. So that's probably the best example of the 1031. But we've gone through a lot of renditions and understanding of what the 1031 means to the economy. And I could go into all that if you want me to.
Well, at a high level, I mean, reducing impediments to transfers, it just seems like a no-brainer. The more I read on it and the more I've educated clients on the simple exchange versus the security side, because
Sure.
for securities, you have to go through a broker dealer. They just don't know
Right.
how valuable a tool it is. And
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So one of the things we had, a few years ago when the Republicans were in charge of the House and Senate and the president was President Trump, they wanted to do tax reform, and their goal was to bring the corporate tax rate down as low as possible. And one of the things they were looking at doing was to eliminate the 1031 exchange and use those tax dollars that's perceived that would be a windfall, which is actually not. They perceived it to be a windfall, and so that woke up the entire real estate roundtable, the commercial real estate universe were kind of like shocked. They're like, oh my gosh, this is, it's kind of like when your mom tells you, go outside and play because it's good for you to be outside and get fresh air. Well, quantify that, right? I mean, that the 1031 is good for the economy, and we know how important it is to commercial real estate. But really, that at that moment in time, we really were, had our feet put to the fire to say, quantify the benefits of the 1031 like kind of exchange. And so that's where the industry came together like not any time before. And we were able to work and do a great job to explain that through a Ling Petrova and Ernst & Young study of macro and microeconomic studies, really to evaluate the whole chain of command and the whole chain reaction of what happens when you do a 1031. And so we were able to educate members of Congress during that time period, and they took the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the jurisdiction for tax. They're the first ones that have to put something forward, and they took it off the table once they realized how important the 1031 was. But at that time, the members of Congress took the personal property that exists for 1031s, they took that away from the tax code. So right now, the tax code, the thing that exists for the 1031 is for real property. And that's what we're talking about now is real property. So President Biden ran for office, and when he ran, he said he wanted to eliminate the 1031 like kind exchange totally. And after he got elected, our coalition came back together, and we were able to educate members of Congress again, and to be able to explain to them how important it is. And so he went from eliminating it to saying he's going to cap it at $500,000. Well, capping at $500,000 is for in commercial real estate is like eliminated. And so there's a bit of variety of things that we're able to do to educate members of Congress of just how important this is. And what's interesting, Andre, is that you've got this concept of the 1031 like an exchange is out there. It's been the tax code for 100 years, but there's so many issues that are on the plate in Washington. I mean, it's like, if you're a member of Congress, it's like drinking from a fire hose every day of, what's going on in, like Ukraine crisis, what's going on in health insurance, and I mean, tort reform, and you name it. And when you say, I'm knocking on the door, hi, I'm here to talk about the 1031 exchange. I actually had a staff member say, no, 1031, no, it's 11 o'clock. So it's like, oh my gosh, we have to educate, because members of Congress come in and out of Washington all the time. And like I said, the members of the staff, they're like, 22 years old, and they're not really versed in real estate. So the coalition that's made up of like 40 some different organizations, including, which is really fun, the different groups like the Nature Conservancy, and I'll tell you why for that, the American Farm Bureau, all these different groups, and it's fun to be able to understand how the 1031 impacts everybody. So I'll just go through some different examples if I could, if that's okay with you.
Please, by all means.
Okay.
Look, the country's far and wide, and our audience is far and wide through.
Perfect.
So
I will highlight that. So one of the areas that we're able to highlight to members of Congress is that this, the concept is the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So the different Ernst & Young study and Lincoln Petrova study highlight that President Biden thought he was going to get $2 billion by getting rid of the 1031. And when they were going to do tax reform and the Build Back Better plan and all that stuff, they were looking at basically capping the 1031 at $500,000 would gain about $2 billion a year for the Treasury. Well, all the studies show that with all the work that's done through transfer taxes when properties are sold, all the different depreciation recapture, the amount of jobs that get created, that basically you're going to be giving up, government's going to be giving up anywhere from $4 to $5 billion to $6 billion of taxes. So there's more taxes are going to be lost than money gained for the Treasury. And so that's where we get the term, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. But the best thing is give an example. So the idea of the 1031, especially in underserved communities, is important to know. So anybody that's a developer, like on the south side of Chicago, Bronzeville, for example, had this IDB Wells housing complex that was torn down 15 years ago, and nothing was there. It was a food desert. There was absolutely nothing there. And so a few years ago, a developer started trying to put in a grocery store. Well, when word got out he was putting in a grocery store, a big firm from New York decided to buy this property from this guy, and they 1031 exchange into this Mariano's, a big, beautiful grocery store, and they plowed a ton of money into this area that really needed it. And so it brought in jobs, it helped reduce crime, it brought in more economic stimulus. So the 1031 was the catalyst for this area of Chicago, Bronzeville, to really wake people up and say, wow, the 1031 is important. And we were on a call with the congressman from that area, who's a Democrat, and we were talking about the 1031 being important. And when I explained to him that this is the grocery store that we're talking about, he's like, that's the grocery store I go to. Oh my gosh. And again, people don't realize how close it is to their home. And you have the past president of the National Association of Realtors is Bill Brown. Bill is from California, and he was the president of the California Realtors. Well, Bill is a big commercial real estate guy, and he buys apartment complexes. That's what he does. And he said, "Oh my gosh, Dan, it's just absolutely crazy if you were to get rid of the 1031 or cap it at 500,000." He said, I couldn't buy apartments then because I used the money that would go to Uncle Sam. I use that for renovating the apartment. So he puts in new carpeting, new kitchens, all that kind of stuff, and he uses the tax dollars that would normally go to Uncle Sam. He puts it into the apartment, and then he's able to make properties that are more downtrodden in an area. He's able to upgrade and make them a better place to live. And so, that's important to know. We've talked about how he usually spends anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 just remodeling, and that's a big deal. So the idea of having capital in underserved areas, you won't. I mean, that is exactly the opposite of what we want to do. We were able to talk to members of the Black Caucus, and they're saying, boy, right now, when you're talking about building transformational wealth for families and for the communities of color to be able to pass that along to their different generations, why would you ever get rid of something that's been in the tax code for 100 years that has benefited so many people? Why wouldn't you want people, different groups that are looking for growth in their economies for their families and stuff? Why would you get rid of this now? And so that was another really important thing to know about. The other interesting aspect is that the different studies that we had that we're talking about, the Ernst & Young study, they talked about how there's at least 568,000 jobs that are created every year. So the concept of 1031 is that owners maintain and buyers renovate. So whenever you have someone changing hands with property, they're going to put their own mark on the property. They're going to paint it. They're going to put in a new roof, new asphalt, whatever it is. And all these jobs, electricians, all this stuff gets created. And there's labor income in 2021 alone. It was like 27.5 billion. The studies are getting updated, and you can go to the 1031 website that we're going to show later to be able to read all these studies if you want to go and do that. But we were able to talk to our local here in the Chicago area, in the suburbs, in DuPage County. we went to Frank Furco. He's the business manager of the IBEW 701, Local 701. And we went to him and said, hey, Frank, the 1031 creates all these jobs for electricians. And then this, a big deal because the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers are a big deal in the world. And he said, Dan, we really like jobs, but he said, this is going to surprise you. One of the aspects for private unions like the IBEW is that we have to fund our own pensions. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess you do. That's right. He said, so if you can show me how the 1031 being capped at $500,000 would hurt REITs, that's a big deal for us because we invest a lot of pension money in REITs. And so it was like a light bulb went off. So Inland was able to get Baker McKenzie to do a study, and we were able to give that to the business manager. And it showed that the value of REITs would go down if the 1031 was capped at $500,000 because REITs use 1031 all the time to go in and out of properties. And so again, it's deferring taxes. It's not a loophole. You're deferring taxes because you're investing and growing property. You're growing the value of property, and that's a really important part.
Well, and it's a common misconception that 1031 exchanges are for the wealthy getting wealthier. It goes both ways. So correct me if I'm wrong here. If I inherit property, I can't manage it. I've never owned a farm, and all of a sudden a family member passes this farm to me or this business and these different assets.
Right.
What happens then? I mean, why is it valuable to Joe the plumber as well as Joe the stockbroker and all the way up?
Right. Well, so for let's say you have a $1 million gain, about 30% of that is going to go to Uncle Sam, and you clearly people want to take that money and they might want to go and buy do a family vacation, do whatever they want to do. If they take the money, if they inherit it, then if they take that, then they have to pay the capital gains taxes and all the other taxes that are related to that. People don't realize there's depreciation recapture. There's also the Obama capital gains tax for all of the Obamacare. So roughly, it's not every place is different. Every state is different with taxes and stuff. But roughly, it's like 30% is what's going to go to Uncle Sam. So if it's not, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to understand. If you're able to have that 30% work for you, and you're growing it in your real estate, it's just like working for you as a 401k money does. Your 401k money is working for you. It's growing. You're using before tax money, and it's growing and growing and growing. And then after you retire, you got this nest egg. Then you start paying taxes. Same thing with 1031, and that's what people, once they get their head around that, then they're like, oh my gosh, that it just makes so much sense, and it works out really well. The other aspect of all this, which is another interesting aspect, is that the other groups that are for the 1031 are conservation groups. So I sit on the board of the Conservation Foundation on behalf of Inland, and the Conservation Foundation, their goal is to have clean water and waters and streams, protect open space, and one of the big advocacy things for like the Land Trust Alliance, the Nature Conservancy, is to get 30% of our land in America to be open space by 2030. So it's a 30-30 plan. And they know that there's not a chance they're going to ever hit that goal if you get rid of the 1031 or cap it, because this is a big deal. Remember, farmers are dirt rich and cash poor. So a farmer is not going to want to sell land to a conservation group that they're wanting, because they're not going to be able to have the money to pay the capital gains taxes. So the 1031 is a beautiful thing for people to be able to utilize. And so there's a ton of examples. There's a Rookery Bay National Estuarian?
Equestrian?
No, not equestrian. Estuary. There you go. Estuary.
Yeah.
Estuary. There's in Florida. It's a beautiful place that was set aside by nature conservancy groups. That was because of the 1031. You have the Mississippi River watershed in Iowa. A big thing for people to realize is that the Mississippi River gets a ton of nitrates in it from farms. And so a lot of these nature groups are trying to get buffers to clean the water through the different marshes and wetlands. And if they can do that, then the water runoff going into the Mississippi won't hit the Gulf and create these dead zones that are happening. And so that's a big deal for the Mississippi watershed to have land, open space, set aside by conservation groups. The other, there's a grassland reserve program in Idaho, And in Colorado, the South Boulder Creek watershed was a big 1031 done that protects water, the watershed for the city of Denver to get clean water. And so there's all these different aspects of the 1031 that people might not be aware of. But when you look at, going into farming a little bit, when you look at the farmers, they have this whole, they're in the land. This is a big deal for them. And so you have a farmer, and Illinois is a great example. You have these squared off tracts of land, and you could have somebody having a tract 20 miles away. And what they want to try to do to save fuel and equipment, all that kind of stuff, is to try to get stuff compacted together. And so the 1031, again, because farmers are dirt rich and cash poor, they don't have the money to pay the capital gains. There's a lot of 1031 exchanging going on between farmers, and that's a really big deal. And one of these aspects related to all of this stuff that we didn't really talk too much about is I can talk at a high, I have my securities license, my Series 7 and 63, and I have my real estate license, and I can talk about at a high level of what a Delaware Statutory Trust is. But now people are really loving this concept that Inland created, and Inland were the lead market bearer of this product. But people are able to take their commercial real estate, their income producing real estate, and they can 1031, just like we did with the Walmarts. You 1031 into a fractional share interest of something that we have, and that's the goal. Again, I can't guarantee it or anything like that. The goal, hopefully, is that people get a return for living income, and then eventually, when we sell, they're able to get another possible return. Again, not guaranteed, but that's the concept of it. And people really have been enjoying doing that. You have to work with a third party to do it. You have to work with when you talk about 1031, you have a really important person called a qualified intermediary, and you work with them. They're all at arm's length of Inland. We don't own them or anything like that. You have people that you work with, but these programs and procedures that exist are just really rock solid. And you work with these great people, these qualified intermediaries. There's a whole industry called the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, and it's not regulated. So it's important to get really good companies that are bonded and insured, and you have some really good companies out there, and it's important to really research that. But the other thing I was going to highlight to you is that during this last debate that I'm very happy to say is now the 1031 is no longer on the table. One of the other things that we were able to do is Inland is very involved in the community, and we know a lot of elected officials, and one of the elected officials was the mayor of Naperville. The mayor of Naperville, his name is Steve CRECo, and Naperville is the second largest economy in Illinois. So you have Chicago and then Naperville. So it's not the second largest city, but it's the second largest economy. It's a really well populated, terrific economy in suburb of Chicago and here in DuPage County. And so we asked the mayor, could he talk to members of Congress? We did a Zoom call with all the members of Congress and their staff. Anybody in Washington had the opportunity to learn about a 1031. And it was so fun to be able to have the mayor be presented on behalf of Inland, was able to highlight that just one qualified intermediary company over 5 years did $450 million worth of 1031s just in the city of Naperville alone. And the mayor was just shocked by that. He's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how important the 1031 is. And he said on the call, he told everybody, okay, everybody take a breath. You go, hold it. Okay, now breathe again. And you realize when he's focused on breathing, you realize how important air is. Well, we all take it for granted. We take breathing for granted. And he said, I want everybody to know in Congress, you take the 1031 for granted. It's been a tax code for 100 years, and you all take it for granted because in his town, he had $450 million worth of 1031s done, which meant that you had medical office buildings that were getting bought and sold, and when they got sold, they got remodeled. And nobody came to the government, as the city of Naperville, and say, hey, we want you to help us remodel this. They were able to use the pre-tax dollars to remodel. You had this really great example along Ogden Avenue, which is a major thoroughfare through the community. It's very high-end, beautiful area. There was older gentleman, owned a Kmart, and the Kmart was dark. There was nothing happening in the Kmart for years. And I think they had a nail salon that was open and some other stuff. And the guy had this all this place paid off for years, but he didn't plan on selling it because he was going to get killed in capital gains and depreciation recapture. So he's like, I'm holding on to this till I die. Well, it was just the most blighted thing with weeds, and the community hated it. But guess what? The community was able to work with Costco. And Costco came to this older gentleman and said, you can 1031 exchange into this apartment complex over here, and it's for sale, and you can 1031, and you can defer the capital gains, and it's phenomenal. And so that's what he did. And so what happens, and this is where we talk about the synergy and the jobs. So there were all these people hired to scrape this huge Kmart complex and strip mall. Jobs created to scrape to get rid of it. Then jobs created to build it, and they built this brand new gorgeous Costco, and then jobs were created for people to work there. And so that's when you talk about the 568,000 jobs a year. This is probably one of the best examples, because you can see this is just one community in Naperville, a little snapshot for one time period that happened about 6 months ago. This happens all across the country all the time, and it's all this synergistic stuff going on in the economy that nobody's paying attention to, but it's happening. It's just generally happening, naturally happening, and it's a big deal.
Well, it's like breathing. It's just been there. It's happening in the background.
Yes.
And until we're choking because we all of a sudden take air away,
right?
We don't know. And it's funny. The first time I heard a 1031 related to a 401k, I went, "Oh my God, I get it." And like you, I looked at my series licenses and so forth. It's so amazing. 10,000 people turning 65 every day. That's 5 years ago statistic.
Right.
Many of whom have portfolios of properties that I wouldn't call institutional quality, but a mixed bag. And now they can take this 1031. They can evolve into the 1031 DST product, selling off this mixed bag of commercial, which can include condos and other things, and stop answering the phone at 3 a.m. So not only does this work for a farmer who's rich, dirt rich and cash poor, but it works for the guy who spent 10, 20 years building up his portfolio of condos and flats and four units to get into the next stage of life ahead of his children and then prepare. It's effective at every cycle and stage of your real estate career. Sounds like. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. And people, realtors are on the call, or on this show, should know, they're listening, is that you cannot get a commission as a realtor for doing a Delaware Statutory Trust 1031. You have to have a securities license, and you have to be with a broker dealer to be licensed. It's just like, for a realtor to know that you have a managing broker that manages your license, you do the same thing for securities license. And I got to tell you, the hardest test I've ever taken, I have a master's degree, I've done a lot of stuff. The hardest test I've ever taken in my life was a Series 7 test. And I tell everybody, there's a God when I passed it on the first try. I'm more of a qualitative guy than a quantitative guy, but it really got into options and stuff, which is scary for me. But I want to tell you that the realtor, they might say, well, why would I ever want to try to promote then the concept of a DST, because I don't get a commission? Well, the realtors that really rise above are always there to be there for the client, and that's the most important thing. And so most of the people who are, the top level realtors, they get it, and they know why it's important. But I go around the country, and one of the couple of things I highlight for realtors is that, number one, that people should know when you do a 1031 exchange, there's a variety of things in the law that you have to follow. And this is where a qualified intermediary can really identify it. There's you have a 45-day period to highlight. When you sell it, you have 45 days to identify a property you're going to go into. Ultimately, you have to close from the day of the sale to 180 days. It's got to be done. So there's certain time periods you got to follow and meet. And then there's about 95% of all the 1031s. You have a 3 property rule where you can, during that 45-day window, you can identify 3 properties. Well, realtors are so busy, they usually only identify 1. And a certain percentage of those fail. So I was at the Texas Association of Realtors giving this 1031 presentation, and afterwards, a guy comes up to me and he says, "Oh my gosh, I wish I knew about this DST because I lost my best friend." I'm like, I was confused. I said, "Well, did he die? What do you mean?" He's like, No, I was his broker, and I sold his ranch for $15 million, and we had a surefire deal. We're going to go at 1031 into another beautiful place. And the last second it blew up, and my best friend had to pay $4 million in taxes, and he's no longer my best friend. He said, if I would have put down one of the DSTs, then I would have been able to use that as a backup, and my friend would not have lost his money, and that would have been phenomenal. And so now I know people in the realtor world that when they do 1031s, they automatically, as standard operating procedure, put a DST down as one of their three choices, because they want to look professional to their client. And ultimately, if their due diligence and everything fails, or something fails at the last minute for the exchange, then they save their client. The other thing is that the DST is used to get people off the sidelines. So there's a couple in Manhattan that had a deli, and their family owned this deli for years in Manhattan. It's with the property was worth a ton, but these senior citizens, they were slaves to their deli. They didn't know how to make money except making sandwiches. They couldn't grasp, what could I do? Because if they sold the building, they would be killed in capital gains. And they thought they were going to die at the deli counter. Well, a realtor heard my presentation, and they went to this nice couple, and they explained a DST. Well, these people started crying because it was their saving grace. They were able to sell their property. The realtor made a commission, but most importantly, they were able to sell it, and they were able to start a whole new life by having this wonderful, this passive investment that was able as the DST. But that whole concept of the DST was able to be the catalyst for somebody to put their place on the market. And as you know now, with cap rates the way they are, it's really hard to find replacement property. And I know that I was at the Beverly Hills Association of Realtors, and when we were explaining the DST, you had people just lining up to talk to me afterwards, because in California, it's really hard when you sell to go back into another place in California that's going to be really accretive. And so the thing with a DST, like Inland, we'll buy stuff in Texas and Florida and Tennessee, places that are more positive in regards to the tax issues. And right now, it's pretty fun when you talk. This is one of the reasons I just love Inland, and it's such a great quality company. Joe Cosenza, if there's a Guinness Book of World Records of somebody doing commercial real estate deals, Joe Cosenza would win. He's in charge of acquisitions for Inland. He's one of the founders. His dad was the barber. Again, these guys come from nothing, but they're brilliant. Joe just purchased, I think, just recently, our 52nd billionth piece of commercial real estate. I mean, that's a big deal. Joe has connections that nobody ever could imagine in all around the country, in every state. He knows Inland's bought stuff in every state except Alaska. And so we have Alaska, there's not, the rooftops aren't necessarily there. You have more caribou than people, right? So, but it's interesting because we have such an incredible process where we do this due diligence that is phenomenal. And then we also have property managers that have managed stuff for years. And we really have a terrific system down in place. So when you're looking at the whole due diligence that Inland does, the average realtor wouldn't have the wherewithal to be able to do what we do and know what the people we know and get the possible off-market deals and things like that. So that's why it's a big deal to be able to find a replacement property by having this DST, because Inland has so much to be able to do. And what's so cool about the DST is that you can have up to 1,999 investors. The old ways of doing this stuff was through TICs, tenant in commons, and the problem with TICs is that you can only have 35 investors. So you have to the minimums are huge to get involved with. But with the DST, the minimums are around $100,000, and so that's a big positive for people. The other huge positive is that with the TIC, Inland, whenever we did them, you'd have to get all 35 of the investors to agree. Talk about herding cats. I mean, it's really tough. You can have one person that says, "Yeah, I don't think we need a new roof." Well, yeah, we need a new roof. Well, I don't think so. I mean, that's all it is. But with the DST, the management is placed upon like the sponsor, like Inland, but whoever the sponsor is placed on the sponsor. So it's really like the investors are they're the owners, fractional share owners of this property, and that they're getting on the kind of the cruise ship, and they're just they're not going to tell the cruise director when they're going to stop the ship. I mean, the captain knows what they're going to do. So that's the concept. But you have somebody like Inland with all of these years of experience, 54 years, I think now of experience, you're able to feel pretty good about it. And our track record just speaks for itself. But that's a big benefit for the DST, so that you don't have to vote on stuff. It's already done for you. And that's a big deal. The other big deal is that the loans are non-recourse to you. So you can, and if you and you can use leverage as well. So let's say I had a gentleman yesterday that met with me that said that he's going to sell a certain amount of his portfolio, and it's going to be $50 million, but he has $25 million of debt. Well, Uncle Sam still is, you have $50 million. You have to, when you do a 1031, you got to be able to match the debt. So we usually, Inland usually has, or the companies that do this have different levels of debt that put debt instruments, and some you might need more. So we might have an instrument that's 80-20 or 50-50 levered, or we have all cash deals. So that's the other really cool aspect of this, that it's always available. And, people can always take out money and do a boot, and that's the extra money left that they want to pay for the tax. They can take a certain percentage out of that. But it's really, the DST is really fun to talk about, because it really has been a tool that has helped so many people. And when farmers hear about this, because a farmer is always having to figure out, well, look at the amount I'm making as a farmer. And then when they figure out, when they work with their financial advisor, this DST, it's like a whole new world for them. It's, again, nothing's guaranteed. I always have to be very careful. I don't want to give the impression that these aren't risks. There's always risk in everything. But it's been really fun to see that we're the market leader, and I think we have over $9 billion of assets under management. So I love Inland and what we stand for. We have a variety of employees, and I think we're up to like 1,000 people. But we've had so many different platforms and companies that we've run and held. And we have a mortgage company, home mortgage company. We have a PACE bond program for commercial real estate. People can put loans on their property taxes to be able to renovate their properties for green energy and green things. We have a development company that at any one time has, I think, $250 million going up somewhere around the country. So there's all these different aspects of us, and it's so much fun, because every day is different. And the company, like I said, is such an ethical company, and they have, one of the things I get to do is represent Inland at all these fun things. So the wellness house is something that Inland is, I think, we've been involved with for, I think it's been over 20 years. And we were one of the major sponsors of their Wellness House Walk. And if anybody's had cancer in their lives, the Wellness House provides free holistic cancer treatment to anybody that needs it in our community. And that's a big deal. And, like I said, the Conservation Foundation, everybody, they're not making more land. So keeping our land clean and safe is good. And Inland is all a part of all that. And so it's pretty fun to represent Inland as an advocate, bringing people together. And then, it's the total American way, helping Main Street Americans invest in stuff, and to protect one of the most important aspects of our tax code that nobody really knows about. And that's the 1031.
401k of real estate.
401k real estate.
Forever known as the 401k of
You know where that came from? I got to be honest with you. Dan Goodwin, he's our chairman and CEO. He's the smartest man I've ever met in my life. And he was telling me that. He's like, you know what? This is really like the 401k of real estate. And so that's where the idea came from, is from him. And that is, and I got to tell you, Andre, that has been the best thing to be able to explain to people, especially, like I said, the members of Congress and their staff, because they get it. It's like, it's not a loophole. It's not fat cats getting rich. I mean, this is for the average Joe, and it works out great. And you should know one of the other aspects of the 1031 that people try to talk about is that when you 1031 exchange and you die, your heirs get everything with a stepped up in basis. So that means that the tax that's owed is wiped away, and it starts afresh when someone dies. And so people think, oh my gosh, 1031 never pays taxes. Well, these studies, the Link Petrova study and the Ernst & Young study showed that over 80% of all deals done in America, commercial real estate 1031 deals, end in a taxable event. It's only a smaller percentage that people get a stepped up basis and they're able to move on. But that's part of our culture in America, that it's been a wonderful thing for farmers to be able to do. because if you realize when I I went to I represented inland at a variety of farming events, and when I was they called me a greenhorn when I went to a farming event and I was at my booth and I would go up to a farmer and said, "Oh, would you like to when you want to sell your land, I want you could do this DST." And this farmer wanted to throw down. He was like, wanted to kill me, and I had somebody had to pull me aside and say, "You can't say that to a farmer because farmers are so proud. They're like." Some people are eighth generations. They've had this farm for 150 years. Well, how have they had this farm for so long? How is that possible? Because of the 1031 exchange. Because there's no way that a farm family could pay the capital gains tax if you didn't have the stepped up basis. They're just farm families wouldn't exist anymore. It'd just be simply a conglomerate that would own farms, and the family farm would not exist if you didn't have the 1031. And that's a big deal.
Not just farms, development, redevelopment, any of these areas, major cities, depressed areas, it is the extra incentive to show up as a developer. It's that part of the capital stack that you get.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
And add to that your CPACE money as well as you're going in. Yeah. There's so much there. And Inland, to your point, has expertise in almost all sectors, if I'm not mistaken, between all the of companies, which is a great thing.
It's really fun. These guys, the one time I think we were the fifth largest owner of retail space in America. We had all this stuff, throughout the years. Where our retail now is more grocery anchored shopping centers, but we were in office. Now we haven't been in office. So the big thing that we do is multifamily. Is a big sector for us. Then the other sector that we're really into is self-storage. Those are terrific. And then, of course, the Amazon, in the industry areas for warehousing is a big deal. And then we have another fund that we do mobile homes. We're mobile home parks. So that's not part of the DST, but that's a different thing we do. But it's it's amazing the kind of contacts that Joe Cosenza has and the Inland has with its experts all over the place. I mean, the folks the Keith Lampy, who's the CEO of our 1031 company, and Nadi Kieferbaum and Raul Segal. I mean, we have some really top level people in the country that they look to. They speak all around the country different things about how this, what our strategy is to purchase stuff, and it's so much fun. And our development company, Tony Casaccio, has been doing that for many years. So you have people that, this is my pin. I'm really proud. This is my 18-year pin at Inland, and that company pride and culture is such a big deal. It's unusual for people to stay at a company a long time. We have people that have been here, they have 25-year pins. People have been here for 30 years. Nobody wants to leave because it's a family. And when you have people that are so ethical and you work with them, and these teachers, again, that started our company where they were able to save people and put all their money back in the company to make sure to save them. I mean, that ethics has transferred, throughout all of who we are, and this is our culture. And so it really is across the board. And when we do philanthropic things, when we do other things, it's just really amazing to work here. So I love these 4 teachers are just absolutely incredible people, and it's fun, and they're involved in the company, running the show, and they're doing a great job. And it's fun to be able to be a part of that.
I love it. Now, I've been lucky enough to grace the halls at Inland, to meet quite a few Inlanders. And if those of you who don't get to meet them, just look for the Inland 40 under 40, 30 under 30. I mean, you guys really take care of your own. And it's an incredible place with incredible people. And as their record shows, incredible success. And that is something you absolutely need with DSTs, is a good track record. And that's what things people need to be aware of. It sounds like they can get educated, anywhere. They can call Inland. When should somebody start talking to a fiduciary or start thinking forward on?
Well, that's a great point. This is the question is there ever a time when you can't do a 1031? The answer is when you sell and take possession of the money. When you take possession of money, the 1031 can no longer exist. You have to first work with a qualified intermediary, because as everyone knows in the commercial real estate world, it's very complex. There's limited partnerships, there's TICs, there's all this stuff that people, this group I talked to yesterday, there were 3 family members, and they had a land trust, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of the land trust to be able to break stuff up. And so they first have to talk to a qualified intermediary. That's most important. And you want to do that. Actually, this client, they have 2 years that they plan. In 2 years is when they're going to sell their portfolio, but they're really smart to do it now, is talk to qualified intermediary. And then you find your financial advisor who can do DSTs, and they can explain to you all the different aspects of them, and the different portfolios that could exist for them, and to get into different things and to diversify. And the other really cool aspect of DSTs is that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You're able to own something in a fractional interest in Florida, a fractional interest in Texas. I mean, it's great to break that stuff up, to be able to figure that out. Again, real estate isn't a 100% deal. I mean, we had DSTs that had hotels, and during COVID, who would have ever thought hotels was a good deal? And now they're coming back. But things happen. Real estate deals are real estate deals. But Inland's track record is what you have to take a look at, and you can't. I don't guarantee anything, but that's what you look at, is what have people done in the past, and that's a great example. And when you have a company that's been around for 50 some years, these guys have experienced these incredible cycles of downturns and all that kind of stuff, and they're able to get back up on top. And during the 2007 downturn, these guys were the first to come out of it doing CMBS debt. Inland was the first to do CMBS debt out in the whole country. So if you are interested in doing anything with the DST, you want to find out more about it, call Inland. We'll be happy to have you talk with our experts. The other thing is, if you're interested in just in the concept of the 1031, I put on your, I think I sent you the website. The Federation of Exchange Combinators have the 1031taxreform.com. So that's a really good one to go to. All the Lincoln Petrova studies, all that stuff gets updated all the time. And so there's just a new update that you can take a look at. And the Federation of Exchange Combinators, they have that. The Institute for Portfolio Alternatives does this stuff. ADISA is another group that does this stuff. There's so many organizations that are all working together to fight on the behalf of commercial real estate. It's pretty exciting. And the big kahuna is the National Association of Realtors. And so just to listen to this, every member of Congress has a realtor attached to them. So that realtor is someone that might have run their campaign, who might have babysat them. And so when we were having this latest discussions with members of Congress, I was able to be on Zoom calls and personal meetings with 70 members of Congress. And I'm able to talk to the National Association of Realtors. They give me the local person who's connected to that member of Congress, that senator or congressman or woman. And it blows their minds. You have all these people on this Zoom call talking about all the statistics, and then sometimes their eyes glaze over because it gets boring. Like, oh yes, it's it. But what ends up happening is that at the end I talk about, hey, Ethel May wants you to know that she wants you to know that the 1031 is super important to the realtors. And they're like, how the heck do you know Ethel May? Ethel May, was my babysitter. Ethel May ran my campaign. And it's been great. Or I have triplets. And I was able to talk to a member, a senator, a very important senator who had triplets. And I would never have known that. And he's like, how did you know I had triplets? I'm like, well, this person said it. And so that wakes them up. And so it's always connecting to that local connection is everything. And the realtors are phenomenal. They do research. They've been incredible. And when people think that are in the commercial world, well, like Inland, we're probably one of the largest commercial organizations ever involved with NAR. And some people say, why would you ever be involved with them? They're 90% residential. Well, they're 90% residential, but they do 51% of all their legislative stuff is commercial. And people don't realize that. It's super important. And so Inland is a very big supporter of the RPAC. And I know I donate to that. They have a president's circle where they identify members of Congress and you donate to. And it's pretty amazing. I'm very proud of being a realtor. I'm proud of all the organizations that we're a part of. I'm the chair of the IPA PAC, and that's another organization. We raise money for NAREIT, National Association of Real Estate Investment Trusts. All these folks, the Real Estate Roundtable, all these folks are just brilliant people who have helped protect the American way. And thank God for that, because everybody's so busy, paying their bills and raising their family. It's wonderful to know you have some really top level people out there that are fighting on your behalf. And I'm really proud to say that Inland, we're leaders in all that, and we invest our profits into belonging to all these different organizations, and that helps our people that that invest with us. That helps everybody, and so it's really fun, and it's an honor to be able to represent our company with this, and be able to talk to guys like you, Andre. Jonathan Stein told me you're a great guy, and you are a great guy.
Oh no, as I said, lucky enough to have met many inlanders, and Jonathan is fantastic,
Yep.
true broker right here.
And he was a teacher too.
I do
Yeah.
know that he's a tenacious networker, and networking is important. But it sounds like for every commercial practitioner out there, if you're not up to speed on the DSTs, you need to get there. We're headed into a downturn potentially. The DST is going to help incentivize these markets, these different places to transact. And it's no cost to reach out and figure out what to do, correct? If someone calls you, no cost. No risk, no cost, all upside. Very much like the CPACE loans.
That's right.
Get involved and ask questions.
Yes, you get involved and ask questions. And then, you interviewed, I think, Anna Maria Kowalik. She's really great at that stuff. But it's simply, asking questions, and qualified intermediaries, they won't charge you. Financial advisors won't charge you. And so it's important to know you can get all the information at your fingertips.
Well, and thank God for Inland putting their money out there to protect everyone else in the market. Really, they started it, they protect it, and they continue to. So,
and it's really it's the philosophy of Dan Goodwin and Bob Baum, Joe Cosenza, and Bob Parks. These four teachers are still, they have the hand on the tiller, and they're running the show, and it's really cool. We have really terrific staff and it's fun to have them at the helm.
You could almost say that they're still teaching the industry a thing or two.
Amen.
Today.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking. It was such an animated conversation. We blew right past the markers. But to our audience, to everyone, thank you for tuning in. We're here at the top of the hour. Dan, I can't thank you enough for coming in, educating this group, the audience, myself, and all the work you do up on the Hill.
I love it. I love being an advocate, and I love coming at you live from Inland, and you get to see Illinois is land of Lincoln. So Lincoln is my hero. My favorite book is ever read is from Doris Kearns Goodwin, Team of Rivals. If anybody who ever wants a great book to read that. It's terrific about Lincoln.
Well, I love it. Coming from Chicago, from Illinois, there you are at Inland. Mr. Mendoza, if you can start to bring us out, we'll wrap up. But to all our listeners, again, thank you. Everybody stay safe. Please tune in every month, same time, same great channel. And Dan, I want to have you back. So
hey, I'm always ready for you. This is great. You're a good man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate all you do. And for those tuning in, download our show anywhere you get your audio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or just ask your Alexa to tune into the CRECo Roundtable with Andreas Senie. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a host of great content, including sector interviews with experts like Dan and Anna Maria from Inland. Please do share, rate, and review us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, punctual as ever. This is the top of the hour, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Mr.